Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Puck on the Parkway. Daniel Rebane, and I'm James Burley, talking all things New Jersey Devils. And we've got a bit of a short update because, of course, the team has slid into their Four Nations break. The Four Nations face-off has taken over the NHL, and it's going to pause hockey in lieu of the NHL All-Star break for a couple weeks. And, of course, we're both repping Team USA. I've got the 1980 Miracle on ice hat. Dan, of course, rocking some Devils flair as well with the captain, Jamie Langenbrunner, from the 2010 Winter Olympics. But first and foremost, it's been a couple weeks since we spoke. Dan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing, I've got mixed feelings today. Obviously, Pete Alonso re-signed with the Mets. Big news for the Mets fans. Sunday, Eagles win the Super Bowl. Terrible news for me as a Giants fan,
Mhm.
especially since it was like one of the worst Super Bowls of my lifetime that I've watched, up there with the Patriots and Rams. That one year, that was just defensive game. This game just sucked because it was an ass beating. Like nothing else to it. Like the Chiefs didn't show up. Patrick Mahomes just, you know, didn't show up at all. He's the reason they lost the game, basically, in my opinion. So I think that takes him out of the GOAT conversation. I think Brady's gonna be the GOAT for another generation. So I'm up and down right now. So I'm right in the middle. And I'm ready for some international hockey, man. And we're both repping USA hockey. We'll get to that point in the second half of the pod. But yeah, back to the Devils. I think they had an up and down week, so let's get talking to it.
Yeah, I mean, you said you've been having an up and down. Devils have kind of been going through an up and down. January was mostly down.
Yeah.
They turned a bit of a corner towards the end of the month and now into February, and things have gone up and down. So that's sort of where we are right now. Last we saw they got a win in Montreal. I was on a plane during that game, so I didn't get to see it, but it was dominant. Jake Allen continues to be a bright spot in the absence of Jacob Markstrom. So,
Yep.
what can you tell me from that game since I missed it, Dan?
I mean, it was just like the previous game against Montreal up in the Bell Center. I mean, talk about just a run that they're on. Like they 10 straight wins up in the Bell Center. When I heard that stat, I was like, that's crazy. Like I remember a time where we kind of struggled at the Bell Center, but they also brought up the most wins on the road for Devils, like in a streak. Bell Center has two of them. So apparently we have a lot of success up there from the middle 2000s to now. And I think it was a great performance, especially after that terrible performance. We'll get to it against Vegas, which I was in the building for. So shout out to the boys performing like that in front of me. But yeah, I think Jake Allen did his thing. He stonewalled Montreal and icing on the cake. Officials gave a penalty shot with like 16 seconds left to try to give Montreal a goal, and he stoned them again. Gets the shutout. Jack and Luke Hughes get a goal each in the same period. I think one of five brothers to do that in NHL history. So I think all in all, it was a great game to end the first half of the season, you might say, heading into the Four Nations tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially after you mentioned it, that loss against Vegas, really disheartening, getting outshot like crazy in that one.
Yeah.
Had a couple days before that, had a good shootout win against Pittsburgh. Tough place to
Hmm.
play, a team that's fighting for playoff position, and then you follow that up with a road loss to Buffalo, where they went down early and clawed their
Hmm.
way back and almost made it a game, but unfortunately fell short. That Montreal game, they needed a win before going into this break. They got it. We've been talking about how valuable this break could be for this team, considering where they were at the start of the calendar year in 2025.
Yeah.
Not in a great place. So I'm hoping that a little bit of momentum into the break gives them what they need to recoil at the end of it. And come, I think it's February 22nd is their first game back
Yep.
against the Dallas Stars. It's a tough game to play first game back, but they'll be at home. You hope that they're going to have a little bit of wind under their sails, and you know what? Maybe it's because their best player Jack Hughes has just won the Four Nations tournament with the U.S. Maybe that helps too. But I digress. Back to Jake Allen. With that performance against Montreal, he moved into the top five in goals saved above expected, according to
Mm.
MoneyPuck.com. That's a good place to be in. And then across all goaltenders who have played at least one game in the NHL, he is sixth in goals saved above expected per 60 minutes. Ironically enough, with only one game under his belt, tied for first is Akira Schmid. And then with 2 games in seventh, just one after Jake Allen, is Nico Dawes. So some good memories of some older Devils, and in Nico Dawes' case, current Devil. Um, but if you aggregate the data for goaltenders who have played at least 20 games, so really all starters and a handful of backups, Jake Allen is just second in goals saved above expected per 60, behind Logan Thompson, who has been a revelation in goal for the Washington Capitals this year. So Allen in good company with the best goaltenders in the league this year. And before his injury, Markstrom was right there as well. So I think we've been reiterating this the entire season, 2024-25 season for the Devils. You can't complain about goaltending, guys.
No.
You've got it. The goaltending is here. We've been blessed, really, with how seamless the transition has been for Markstrom and for how good Allen has been in the 1B role. So I've really enjoyed watching the Devils goaltenders this year. The numbers back it up. The eye test backs it up. Let's talk about the guys who are playing in front of them. While there are some things that, ideally aren't going their way, another injury added to the ranks. Jonas Sigenthaler out. I mean, there's been some kerfuffle between whether or not the Devils reporters have been able to report accurately on what goes on. And according to some Swiss media, Siegenthaler's camp has suggested that he's going to be out for weeks after a surgery. We don't know what the truth is there, but it's don't know why that wouldn't be the case. So that's something that the Devils are going to have to deal with. Hopefully not for too long after this break. That's a very important piece to their blue line. And, in the absence of some defensemen, we called up Simon Nemec, who is a guy we've talked about. Feels like maybe he's been treated unfairly, being stuck in the AHL for most of this year.
Ooh.
Tough transition to come right back to the NHL and expect to play your game at a high level, but he didn't really do that. He struggled a bit. So let's start there with Nemec because we talked about it, and we'll get to some of the positives later. Did not look great. I believe it was against Vegas. He did not look great. And
Terrible.
ahead of the break has been sent back down. I wouldn't read too much into that
No, no,
because
no. Yeah.
this is a chance for him to get games. But yeah, overall, your thoughts so far on the Nemec call up, the Siegenthaler injury, and anything else that comes to your mind.
Yeah, I'll start with Siegenthaler. It kind of sucks because it was just like a weird play. Like, obviously he's going to dump the puck in on at the red line and his like knee gives out on him. He falls. I thought he got hit and got injured like that. But on replay, he just kind of his like knee just gives out and he falls backward. It's kind of awkward. Doesn't put any weight on it. I'll say weeks is better than months. So maybe he's out. Weeks maybe means he's out the regular season and he comes back in the playoffs. Or maybe he's just out a couple weeks. We kind of had the same situation with Lazar. We didn't know what was going on. As I believe it's still a knee injury with Siegenthaler as well. And when Lazar came back, we were both shocked. We were like, "Oh, I thought he would have been out for the year," based on how they were talking. So we'll see. He has surgery today, Tuesday. So we'll have more information probably Wednesday or the end of the week. But let's get to Nemec, man. We remember I was critical of his comments talking about how he kind of, basically said he deserved to be in the NHL since he was the second overall pick a couple of years ago. And boy, was I was critical of him on that day, Thursday, right? It was Thursday against Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Man, he looked terrible. That might have been like the worst game of his career. I mean, to come out, his first big play of the game was he fell in his own zone, giving Vegas a 2-on-1 where the guy basically just walked in. Would have scored on Jake Allen if Jake Allen didn't put his glove on the ice and just knock the puck away. But yeah, he was just terrible. He couldn't link any passes together. His positioning was off. For whatever reason, it just wasn't playing his game. Maybe he was just, tight because he's like, I need to make my mark. But I'll say he bounced back in that Montreal game. Wasn't a great game by any means, but I didn't notice him that much. And that's what you kind of want for a third pair defenseman. You don't notice him. So I'll say he had an up and down 2 games. He'll get to go back to Utica, like you said. He gets 5 games until the Devils play another game. in the NHL. So get those games, get your legs back underneath you. Dawes is going down there, and who else is going down there with them?
Hataka?
Yeah, Hataka. Hataka cleared waivers, so that was also good. So Hataka get games underneath his belt, and I think if Hataka plays, shows that he's fully healthy with in these 5 games, I think he's the one that comes back up if Siegenthaler's
I,
out.
yeah, I was gonna say he kind of fits the bill a bit more for what
Left-handed defenseman as
yeah, for
well.
what you lose in Siegenthaler, but I think those guys will be in competition for each other to get that
Yes,
call up spot.
yes.
Um, excuse me. To say that Nemec, this proves that he is not ready for the NHL. I'm not saying that's what you said.
No, no, no.
Yeah, that's not true because we've seen him at the NHL. We know he's capable of playing at that high of a level. It just didn't happen that night.
Hmm.
And I think I hope that this becomes a teaching moment for a guy like him. He's still young. He's still only a couple years removed from his draft year.
Yeah.
So I think that becomes a learning lesson for him. And then when he comes back to the NHL, because we know he will, he's going to have a long NHL career. You hope that that's really ends up being a turning point for him in terms of how to elevate your game because we know he's capable of it. I'm
Yeah.
not too worried about that long term. And Santeri Hataka is a guy that has kind of been overlooked in what is an otherwise crowded blue line room, and I think he's a guy who can be really valuable as well. He's going to be tough for him to secure a long term spot on this blue line for New Jersey, but he's certainly good enough to do it. We saw it in flashes last season with the Devils. Yeah, I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do now that he's coming back from injury. So,
Yes.
with that being said, let's talk about some forwards. Jack Hughes, 10th. Jesper Bratt, 11th in points. And we'll talk about it when we get to the formation stuff. But Jesper Bratt is the leading Swedish scorer in the National Hockey League. I don't know how that translates to being a third liner, but, we'll get there. Overall, Jack, dealing with that hand injury for a while. Kind of feels like he's gotten past that a little bit more, taking more faceoffs. We saw Luke Hughes take that faceoff in overtime. Still hilarious to me. Overall, your assessments on him bouncing back, getting points pretty consistently again, and Jesper has just been that guy all season long.
Yeah, I think when those two play together, I think it's special. They're just on the same wavelength. They know where each other are on the ice. Um, but like sometimes I would say like right now when you're missing a couple key pieces up front, you probably have to like separate them so your lineup is a bit deeper. But what I've seen from them this year is funny thing is like I don't even think Jack's playing his best hockey and he's still producing as a top 10 offensive player in the league. Jesper Bratt is playing out of his mind. This is going to be probably his best offensive output of his career. So for them to be, neck and neck with each other, Jesper Bratt's only a point behind them. I think just bodes well for the Devils going forward. Not just this year, but in future years going forward, especially just having them on what they're making. Like, Jesper Bratt's just making a hair under 8 mil. Jack's making 8 mil until, the end of the decade. So, I like what I've seen. Obviously, Jack has another step to take with his game, and I think maybe playing with a guy like Austin Matthews and Jake Gensel at the Four Nations could probably unlock that next level for him when he comes back. Especially if you saw some of these clips that are coming out of USA practice. I mean, there people are raving about Jack wearing this USA jersey, and I think having this experience, even though Quinn's not there, we'll talk about that a bit more. But I think something different when you wear that USA jersey nowadays for a lot of these players, and I can't wait to see how he plays on Thursday.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't get to do it much often these days, at least in the hockey world. Um, with that being said, I do think that it's been obvious now for a couple seasons, and perhaps even more than a couple seasons, but Jack has now not only because he's wearing the A, but has really become a leader for this team, in my opinion.
Mhm.
You always felt that maturity with Bratt, but there was a bit of an immaturity to Jack's game, right? Like holding onto the puck too long, trying to
And you
skate
still see
through,
that a
and you
bit.
still see it to a degree, right? But
Yeah.
I think it's less so now about trying to just be the guy, and more so now about accepting responsibility. I feel like that he genuinely feels like he needs to be the guy who moves the team forward for New Jersey. And without Nico Hischier on the ice, uh, Jack getting his first shorthanded goal, things like that to me speak to the maturity of this kid.
Yeah.
People still look at him, see him as a kid. He's still got a bit of a baby face to him, and that's always going to follow him around somewhere. But I just wanted to make this point in saying that I really do think that he's a bona fide leader in this league, and we know that he's obviously a superstar in this league. He's been that now for a little while. But I think this season and this stretch without Nico for me has really spoken to me that Jack is capable of carrying that sort of torch. Obviously, doesn't have the 200-foot game that Nico has. Obviously, is not going to be as effective in the circle. But this is a guy who has constantly improved his game on both sides of the ice, who's constantly gotten better at the intangibles, who hasn't let physicality really be a damper to his game this year. We're not we knew it would come with time, but we're not really talking about Jack Hughes like, this kid's got to hit the weight room.
Yeah.
And even a couple years ago when he scored all those points, I still remember hearing those comments. I haven't really heard that this year. There have been some times where it's like, he hasn't gotten a point in a couple games. Where'd he go? Gave up the puck in overtime. Again, I think this is all part about him becoming a more responsible version of himself.
Mhm.
And I really do think he's taken those steps to grow. Um, I don't know. I think sometimes it can be harder to see than others. He can still devolve back into some not so great habits, but
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've been blessed as fans and as reporters to have gotten the chance to cover and talk about this guy as a New Jersey Devil. I never thought in my life that there would be a guy I could be like, yeah, he's definitely better than Patrick Elias to be a New
Oh,
Jersey
yeah,
Devil.
right?
But I mean, this guy is that. He just is. And I mean, we've got another player who's sort of a prospect to talk about. But I mean, any last thoughts that you want to mention on Jack or even Jesper?
Yeah, I'll just, make a couple points, for when they both came into the league, both offensive guys, flashy to their game, just, short guys, quick on the puck. For both of them to kind of add a defensive element to their game is really good to see because not everybody does that, and we're kind of seeing that with Connor Bedard right now in Chicago. He's getting criticized for being maybe lazy on the defensive side or not having good habits, as a center. So for a guy like Jack Hughes to kind of take on that responsibility that Sheldon Keefe's put on him, I think he's one of the leader top 10 in stick checks this year. I think it's very noticeable that he backtracks or backchecks and his stick is very active. We've always known his stick is very active in the offensive zone. But when you see it now happening along the boards, in front of the net, stealing the puck, and Jesper Bratt doing the same thing along the boards as a winger, I think him showing his physicality, Jesper Bratt as well. He's throwing hits when he's forechecking. It's good to see. It shows that this team, these players, have individual skill, but they're coming together more as a team, trying to play a more team game. Obviously, we'll get to future episodes where we talk about goal scoring not being there this year. That happens. They'll have to add some goal scoring at the deadline if they want to, maybe be a Stanley Cup contender, like a real Stanley Cup contender. But I think they have everything else on this team. It's just if they can get more goals, I think they are a real force going forward. So I've liked what I've seen. Obviously, there's bits and pieces of each individual's games that can improve and take that next step. But I can't wait to get back after Four Nations. Hopefully, everybody's healthy. Nico Hischier gets healthy. Sigenthaler probably doesn't return, but I think he'll return before the season. So just everybody rest up, get your bumps and bruises healed up, and we'll see what the second half of the season has to offer.
Yeah, I think one point of mention that we'll make before we talk about the MVP of the Beanpot, really, and that's that we're 3 weeks and change away from the trade deadline.
Yep.
And I had some friends ask me what should the Devils do at this deadline, and it's a tough question to answer because they could make some moves and get in another center, another bottom six, another top six guy. Something that they really could use to bolster this team. And if they wanted to make a push for a cup run, a real cup run, that's kind of what would be required of them. But in that end, they would have to give up something that would likely be useful for the future. And they have so many of those guys that you don't really want to say goodbye to them just yet, you know? Guys like Seamus Casey, Simon Nemec, even Santeri Hitaka. You don't want to say goodbye to those guys just yet, right? So I think it's difficult to foresee what trades they could be making. I also think that it doesn't have to be this year. I know that this team has got a lot of guys locked up long term, and while some pieces, you don't necessarily expect Jonathan Kovacevic to have a 2024-25 type of season every year. I think you can bank on the fact that this team, it works. It just needs a little bit more time to gel. I think they need to go through that sort of adversity where they don't hit the ultimate achievement for a little while before they ultimately get there. I don't think Florida gets a Stanley Cup without losing to Vegas in the Cup final. I don't think Vegas wins a Cup final without losing to Washington in their very first year.
Yeah.
So I think this is all part of the process. I think it could be potentially a little bit foolish if the Devils make a big splash ahead of the March 7th trade deadline and it doesn't pan out. I think that they need to be a little bit more responsible about how they approach this season. I'm sure you're somewhere in the middle of what I'm saying, Daniel, because I know you live for the big trades. I know you love fantasizing about it. The Puckopedia, you're all over it.
Yeah.
I just want to hear what's your final take on that before we talk about who we're going to talk about. I think everybody's waiting.
I'm actually kind of with you. I think, I'm not trading any big prospects.
Uh-huh.
I'm looking to trade like they have 3 second-round picks. I'm
Yeah.
okay with trading one. I'm okay with trading our third-round pick as well this year. I'm also okay with trading, you know, picks in next year's draft. Not the first round pick, but second round pick. It's open to discussion. I think you go get Ryan Donato for a third round pick and like a lower tier prospect. Like maybe I don't know, like a Josh Philman, something like that, somewhere in that middle to lower tier range. But yeah, I'm not open to unless there's like a guy that just becomes available that you have for long term that you're like, okay, I see him as part of the core,
Yeah.
and then you can do it. But I don't think those type of guys are available right now. So
Yeah.
if you can go get a Ryan Donato right now for a third round pick and a prospect, or you can go get, an Oliver Bjorkstrand out of Seattle for a second round pick. I'm fine with and Bjorkstrand also has another year on his contract. I'm fine with both if you can get both those guys, I think that's a pretty fine trade deadline for the Devils.
Yeah, I think that'd be an A plus. I don't think anybody would be upset with that. If they can make a Timo Meyer type of move, I say go for it. If not, I would caution against
Yeah.
shedding any prospects and more than one or two of those second round picks for this coming draft. So
Yeah.
with that said, I think this has kind of been the biggest news really in terms of the last couple days in terms of the Devils, and that's Mikhail Yegorov has taken the NCAA by
Big
storm,
Mike, baby.
has maybe been in his 5 games the
Yeah.
best. I mean, it's not even maybe, he's probably been the best college hockey goalie playing for BU. He's been 2 games against BC,
Yeah.
conceded 1 goal, and it was only on that penalty for skating out early.
Yeah, he's given up 2 goals against
Two,
BC
two,
in two
excuse me.
games. Like,
Yeah, unbelievable. And he wins the Eberle Award after winning the Beanpot. BC, the heavy favorites in that, but BU take it away from them. I mean, this guy has been look. If the Islanders and Rangers can have an
yeah,
amazing Russian
right.
goalie, why don't the Devils just do it too?
Yeah, I mean, I think the prophecy of the Devils finally getting their Russian goalie is a couple years away. I think I like it might be we might be going a bit bold, but like from his college tape, because I've watched all 5 of his games in college because they're available on ESPN Plus since the Hockey East is on Nesson. They have a deal with ESPN Plus. I digress. He looks phenomenal in that. Like he might have looked like this in Omaha, but Omaha stinks in the USHL. But he's come in, halfway through the year, taking on the starting job at, BU, one of the biggest teams in college hockey, and it's just run with it. I mean, the losses that he has on his record aren't his fault. Like, they lost to BC in BC in his first ever collegiate game. because the doorman opened the door too early for him. Right before the title game in the Beanpot, they lose to Merrimack because the team didn't show up in front of him. They lose in overtime. I mean, this guy looks phenomenal. He makes 69 out of 71 saves in the Beanpot at over 2 games. Wins the Everly Award for best save percentage, so best goalie in the tournament. Um, I mean, he looks insane. I mean, he's 6'5". He looks huge in net. Like it's crazy for an 18-year-old to look like this massive in net. And everybody's just raving about him, like his teammates. Jay Pandolfo, shout out to him because like he's one of the reasons he's there in the first place. Like, you know, for a normal college team, they could have just been like, we'll just pick him up next year. He'll start for us probably in the fall. He said, no, no, no. We're struggling in net. We see that Omaha just stinks. No offense to Omaha, but they're going through turmoil. They had communication with the Devils, and they made a decision to get him in and roll early. And I mean, he's taking this job with ease. I mean, he's making this look easy. He's got a 950. He's got a 950 save percentage in 5 games. I mean, his goals against is under 1.5. I mean, his stats are up there with the best in college hockey. I mean, you think of guys like Trey Augustine, Fowler from BC, Western Michigan has another goalie that's a freshman. Like those guys are putting up numbers and they're well-known names. I said it last night. I think Devils fans already knew about Big Mike, but last night was a game that Big Mike arrived on the scene around the country. I mean, I might be bold, but I'll be dropping my prospect rankings soon for the winter. I think he's in the top 3 for the Devils right now. I think he's that good. I think his potential is top 10 goalie in the league. Like he's showing that right now. Like he's got that potential. He's got the frame. I mean, he's just a calming force in net. Like for a team that kind of struggled, like BC struggled to keep the puck out of the net. You just put a freshman in there, he's just making saves left and right, calm, easy. So I think in like 3-4 years, he could be in New Jersey and he could be that Russian goalie that we've been longing for our entire lives. Like I think the Devils have never had a Russian goalie, right? That's the stat. They've never had a
I
Russian
don't believe
goalie.
so. I
So
couldn't think of one.
yeah, so he was the second goalie picked in the draft, and he's showing why that Martin Brodeur, Scott Clemenson, and co in the goalie room upstairs in the front office, they believed in him, and oh boy, they might have hit gold with this pick. And don't remember where we got this pick from. John Marino going out to Utah. So shout out to John Marino for getting us Big Mike and net. And
Yep.
I've been watching every game. I'm gonna be locked in the rest of the season. I'm gonna be locked in until he signs a professional contract with the Devils because watching him in net is a fun experience. So I can't wait till he finally gets pro. It's gonna take a couple of years. Obviously, he's still just 18 years old. He's a smart kid, man. That's why he chose BU. Speaks great English for a Russian kid. So I can't wait for him. He's got a great personality.
Yeah.
Even the commentators were like raving. They called him special on the broadcast last night.
No, he was super. He's a super bubbly guy in interviews. He's hyping up the fans behind the glass, and
Yeah,
it's only 5 games, but come on, all aboard the hype train.
yeah,
Like we haven't been this excited about a goalie prospect since 2018 and
yeah.
19,
Blackwood,
Mackenzie Blackwood.
but
And
this
I think
is this is a
this is
different
something
level.
different. This is something
Yeah,
different. I agree. And it's only 5 games, but a 9.51 save percentage against some of the best teams in college hockey, a 1.41 goal against average. I mean, we don't get the advanced goaltending statistics for uh, college hockey, at least not as accessibly as we do for the NHL. But, to come in and replace a goaltender who's played 20 games and is at a 3.17 goals against average and below 900 save percentage, and you get that big of an elevation, like
yeah.
that can change a team's season. So I
And
don't
it's
know.
not like, and it's
It
not
can't
like,
be. It can't just be he hit a hot trail. Like this is something different. He's brought a whole new vibe to that team and that dressing room.
And it's like if you look at BU's team, I would have thought like coming into watching their first game, I would have thought like, man, they don't really have that much talent like on D. They have Cole Hudson. They have a first round pick from Vancouver. They have another draft pick on there. They have talent. So like all they needed was like just that calming presence in net.
Yeah.
And they might have got it. So like I wouldn't be shocked if this team made a run into the Final Four. I'm not saying they would win a Natty, but I could see them making another Final Four this year with Big Mike in that because he's made a big difference and you could see it. If Jay Pandolfo believes in him, I believe in him.
Well, there you have it. I think Yegorov could be the backstop that brings the Terriers to the promised land and one day maybe the New Jersey Devils. That's all the time we have to talk Devils, though, on Puck on the Parkway this week. But stay tuned because we are going to be talking about something else that's relevant in Devils land, but as well as the hockey world as a whole. We're going to be talking Team USA. That'll be somewhere else on the YouTube page. I don't know where you click, go find it. Maybe it'll be on Spotify too. We'll figure all that out. But for now, I've been James Burley. That's Daniel Rebane. Thank you guys so much for watching, and let's go Devils.
Peace.